I was so honored in my ministerial life to know an incredible practitioner named Dorothy Lance. And Dorothy took practitioner studies with me when she was approaching 90 years old. I was so impressed with her. And one day she told me a story that really stuck with me. It was about growing up as a little girl during the Great Depression in Nebraska. And sometimes after having maybe little to eat, she would take one of the only books that she had, the Holy Bible, up to the top floor of the family's barn. And she would read the Bible stories, and she would watch the sun set, and she would dream and imagine of being a part of these incredible tales that took place in Egypt and in Israel and Palestine and all over the Middle East. And she shared with me that after living a long, full life of career and parenting, when she was 60 years old, she got to retire. And one of the things that she got to do was to travel to Egypt. And she shared that on her first evening there, she was enjoying herself, having a good time, but she had a moment alone and she watched the sunset. And it was in that moment that it had been decades since she had remembered being that little girl, dreaming of being in Egypt, experiencing the places where those incredible tales in the Holy Bible had been told. And it was as if that little girl's dream, that little girl's prayer, that little girl's wish on those evenings as a child had somehow brought forth all of the adventures and experiences of her life to bring her right there, right now, to that experience of that sunset in Egypt. It's an amazing thing when we think of the creativity of our own minds, the intentions of our own heart, the power of a child's prayer. I wonder if in your own life you can think back to younger times, to things that you wished for or hoped for, and maybe they were deeper than wanting to be a fireman or a superhero, but maybe they had to do with the types of relationships you wanted to experience, the adventures that you wanted to have. The person you knew, the acorn in your heart, was calling you to become. We lost a great American figure and artist a couple weeks ago by the name of David Lynch. Great film director, author, artist, great champion of transcendental meditation as well. And an essential idea for Lynch in filmmaking and in meditation and in this thing called consciousness, he entitled Catching the Big Fish. And he shared quite simply that on the surface of the water of our minds, there are all these little fish. And when we put down the line of our consciousness, we're often most likely to catch those little fish that are on the surface. When we think of this thing called the creativity of mind that we love to explore in the science of mind, I am more apt to say that these little fish aren't very creative. These little fish are the thoughts that are kind of coming up in our minds like trying to tune into a radio station. Sometimes they're not even our own. They're reactions, they're responses, they're the thoughts of the world, but they're all there hovering on the surface. I guess if you're thinking of them consistently, maybe they have some creative power, but to me, they're just little fish covering up what's deeper below. When we bring a more conscious awareness below where those little fish are, the fish start to get bigger. We might say the next phase of this in our own consciousness are our beliefs, our stories, our narratives, our memories, our hurts. So many aspects of our experience, and I think for better or for worse, these are very creative in our lives. They color our experience, and they decide so much about how much of ourselves we bring forth in our conversations, in our quiet time, in our ways of being in the world. But if you go even lower, even deeper with that line of your awareness, especially through that spiritual practice of meditation, that's where Lynch tells us we find those really big fish. For him, they were creative ideas for movies and for projects. For us, it will be creative ideas as well, but it might be our deepest, most profound truths, the truth of who we are, the truth of our prayers, the truth of our hopes and our dreams, the truth of our aspirations. It's there, perhaps, that my friend Dorothy's prayer swam and swam, worked and worked, remembered and remembered, working through her beliefs, working through those little fish thoughts at the top, but always more powerful in the sense of ever pushing her towards an experience of realizing her dream. I invite you this week or next, or even just right now, to go a little deeper, to catch a big fish. When we do so, we're not only catching the big idea, but we're reconnecting with who we are. David Lynch, perhaps more than anyone else in terms of pop culture, is influential on who I am today as a minister. I'll always remember, and I remember this thinking of my story of Dorothy as well, being 9 years old and in a hotel room with my family. And a hotel room with 2 queen beds. Mom and Dad were in one bed. My brother and sisters were in another bed. And I always got the floor in the middle. And so I always remember being in my little bed and looking up at the television, and there was this TV show on called Twin Peaks. And the scene was of an FBI agent out in the woods with a sheriff's department crew. And he began by giving them a tale of the history of the country of Tibet and its relationship with China. And then he shared about a dream he had where he had received an intuitive skill, and he began to utilize that skill by throwing rocks at bottles while officers called out the names of potential suspects for who killed Laura Palmer. And there was something so special about it. There was mysticism, there was a mystery, there was an interfaith aspect to it. There was a great commitment to being good and doing right. And I always remember continuing to watch that show as a child and other David Lynch movies, and if you've seen them, you could see why it's a little strange a 10 and 11-year-old was watching them all like me. But they helped lead me on my spiritual path. Similar to Dorothy, there was something right there as a child in watching that knew exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to engage with mystery. I wanted to be good. I wanted to focus on the intuitive and on the interfaith. And somehow here I am. It's kind of funny because I would call that my Ed Sullivan, Beatles on Ed Sullivan moment. And I think David Lynch's last public appearance that I saw was on a documentary called Beatles 64, where he randomly got to be at one of the first concerts of the Beatles coming to America in 1964. What was it for you as a young person that not only helped call you or give you a foreshadowing of what was to come for you, but where you planted those seeds of intention? And now what I call you today is to go deeper. Go deeper, deeper, deeper. Catch those big fish, remember them, and you can bring them forth into your life. So join me if you would in just taking a deep breath. Allow the hook of your consciousness to dip into the ocean of holy awareness. Past all of the surface thoughts, the worries, the little regrets, the little stresses, the observations and reactions, going deeper into sometimes the dark woods of beliefs and narratives and stories. Deeper still into a holy presence where our dreams are already true, where our aspirations are already realized, where the whole of our experiences are already well and good. Connecting with this place, I know it inspires each of us with a creative power, a creative instinct, and an ability to see truly and rightly, to live in this moment, fully present, fully aware in all of our creative power. And so it is. Amen.